Here's a pattern I see over and over again. A corporate exec leaves a big role, hangs out their shingle as fractional, and 6 months later, they're exhausted, they're underpaid, and they're wondering what went wrong. It's not that they're not talented, they are. It's not that there's no demand, there is. The problem is mindset. They're still thinking like an employee, still operating like a contractor, and selling their time instead of building a business. If that's you, this episode is your turning point, because the moment you start thinking like a CEO, everything will change. Hi, I'm Sue Misko. I'm the founder of Fractional OS, the author of the Amazon #1 bestseller, The Fractional Formula, and the creator of Fractional in a Box. It's a system that's helped hundreds of experienced professionals like you go from invisible to in demand as high-value fractional executives. I've worked across the entire C-suite, CEOs, CMOs, CTOs, CFOs, COOs, CHROs, all of you who have left leadership roles only to find yourself stuck in what I call the contractor's quicksand, the freelancer purgatory. You're doing work you don't love. You're doing work for clients who just don't get it, and you've got no structure to grow beyond survival. And if that's you, it's not your fault. But it is your responsibility to change it. And that shift starts with how you see yourself, from freelancer to founder, from implementer to strategic partner, from contractor to CEO. Here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to break down the 5 mindset shifts that every fractional must make to stop acting like a contractor and start building like a CEO. If you want to scale, this is where it starts. Let's start with the biggest identity trap I see in this space: contractor thinking. Most fractional executives say they left corporate to build a business, but when you look under the hood, they're still acting like employees. They're still waiting to be told what to do. They're still measuring value in hours instead of outcomes. They've swapped a boss for a client and rebuilt a job with a whole lot less security. So here's what I mean. On the left, we have our freelancer, our contractor. And what do? They sell time. They trade dollars for hours. They take direction instead of leading. They get pulled into execution. Instead of leading, they're being pulled into the doing. And where does this lead? It leads them to be seen as temporary, but more importantly, replaceable. If you're acting like a CEO with a CEO mindset, you're selling outcomes. And most importantly, you're setting the direction. You're leading. You're letting them know where they need to go. You're leading the strategic change. Most importantly, you're seen as essential. And at the end of the day, you go from being replaceable to irreplaceable. And this is what you want. You want to be seen as the person who brings the outcome, who's setting the direction. You're leading the strategic change. You want to be seen as essential, irreplaceable. And what this does is it shifts everything, because it shifts how you price, how you position, and it shifts how your clients treat you, and most importantly, how your time scales. When you show up like a contractor, you get managed. When you show up like a CEO, you're going to be trusted. You're going to be that trusted resource. And so the difference might look subtle on paper, but in practice, it changes everything, because it changes how you price. Contractors and freelancers, they quote in hours, they trade time for dollars. Our CEO, everything is anchored to outcomes. It changes how you position. Freelancers and contractors, you're competing on availability. You're a good fractional with a good resource. But our CEOs, you're leading with authority. And it changes how your clients treat you, because contractors get managed. Our fractionals who lead like CEOs, you get deferred to. And most importantly, it changes how you scale your business, because time doesn't scale, but systems and leadership does. You can scale systems. You can't scale time. You do not want to be seen as an extra pair of hands, someone who's helpful but replaceable. You want to be seen as a partner, critical, strategic, and most importantly, trusted. You want to be that trusted partner, because as a fractional, you're not here to fill a gap. You're here to drive growth. And that can only happen when you stop thinking like a doer and start acting like the owner of a real business, a business that has vision, structure, and scale. You scale by building something that works, even when you're not in the room. And that's not how most fractional businesses are built. Most are built on effort, not infrastructure. The fractional is the marketing team, the sales team. You're the client success manager, you're the scheduler, you're the strategist, you're the brand, you're the fulfillment, you're the admin, you're the inbox, you're the everything, which works until it doesn't. until your calendar fills up, until one client demands too much because you haven't set boundaries, until family emergency hits, or worse, burnout absolutely creeps in. And then everything grinds to a halt because you're the system. And that's the hidden bottleneck. It's not that you're not good enough. It's that your business can't run without you babysitting every inch of it. And here's the hard truth. If the business breaks when you take a week off, it's not a business. It's a high effort job in disguise with no security. Systems are what change that, not just SOPs and templates. I'm talking about infrastructure, the kind of foundational setup that gives you leverage. If you're running an effort-based business, you're driving every lead, every proposal is custom. You have no system for repeatable delivery. Your revenue, unstable. And what does it lead to? Burnout. If you have a system-based business, you've got consistent leads. You've got standardized offers. You have a proprietary method that drives consistency, because then what happens? You have predictable revenue. And most importantly, you have growth. And growth becomes possible. And this is why when we have our fractional operating system, we don't actually start with marketing. We start by getting you out of the middle so your business can function without constant reinvention. Your offer becomes the engine. Your pipeline becomes the fuel. Your delivery becomes your proof, and your time will start to become yours again. Systems aren't about scaling for the sake of scaling. They're about creating breathing room. They're about creating predictability. They're about creating freedom. And most importantly, they're about creating control. Because you know what? Hustle doesn't scale. Structure does. And structure is what turns a capable executive like yourself into a true fractional leader. You are not here to fill a gap. You're here to drive growth. You're here to drive outcomes. And that only happens when you stop thinking like a doer and start operating like a fractional business owner. Let me ask you something most fractionals never stop to consider. Are you leading the engagement or just executing inside of it? Because here's the truth. Most fractional execs are still playing small. They're getting hired for their brain and they're getting used for their hands. They sit on strategy sessions. They nod along in Slack. They rewrite someone else's deck. And it's called leadership. But leadership isn't that. Leadership isn't about being involved. It's about setting direction. It's about holding the frame. It's about driving outcomes. It's about creating transformation. Fractionals are responsible for three things. They're responsible for driving the strategy, being a leader in the C-suite, and getting results. And if you're not claiming that leadership space, someone else is going to define it for you. And this is how this could show up. Maybe you're looped into too many meetings, but you're not actually influencing decisions. Maybe you're asked for input, but not accountability. Maybe you're trying to deliver value, but you're still being managed. That's not leadership, that's support. And I get it. After decades inside large organizations, it's natural to adapt, to try to stay useful, to fill the gaps. But as a fractional, you're not hired to fill gaps. You're hired to own a result. And results don't come from taking direction. They come from setting the direction. So let's talk about how do you be that authority leader, right? On the bottom rung here, we have our doers. They execute tasks, they take direction. On our next level, we have our advisor. They consult, they give input, but they're still reactive. And on our top rung, we have our strategic partner. They define the outcome. They lead the process. So ask yourself, where are you actually showing up on the ladder? Because here's what happens when you stay at the bottom. You're seen as helpful, but not essential. You get invited to the conversation, but you're not trusted to drive it. And you get paid for efforts and not results. But the moment you start showing up at the top of the ladder as the strategic partner with a point of view, a proven process, everything shifts for you. Your influence increases. Your clients trust you more, and you stop selling time for hours, and you command value. And guess what? As you go up this, so does your price. And this is why having a proprietary method matters. It's not just a tool, it's the evidence that you're leading with intention, that you bring the structure, you bring the clarity, and you bring direction wherever you go. Leaders don't want to be briefed, they define the brief. And you want to be seen and paid as the strategic partner. And if you want to do that, you need to show up like the strategic partner right from the first call. You need to stop asking, where can I help? And you start leading. What is the result we want? What is the smartest way to get there? And you define that path. That is what's going to make you irreplaceable. And that is what visionary leadership looks like. Let's call it what it is. If your calendar is empty, unless someone refers you, you are not running a business. You're reacting to whatever comes your way. Most fractional execs don't have a client problem. They have a control problem. They have no system, no visibility, and no process for generating demand. They're waiting for a past client to circle back, waiting for a referral to pan out, or waiting for someone to magically find them on LinkedIn. Waiting is not a strategy. And it's definitely not how a leader builds anything that's predictable, sustainable, or scalable. Here's the difference. A reactive business is built on hope. You hope that someone reaches out. You hope that your next client finds you. You hope that the proposal lands. A proactive business is built on process. It knows who it's for. It has a system for visibility, a system for engagement, a system for conversion, and it generates leads on purpose, not by accident. So if you have a reactive business, you're living on referrals. You're being inconsistent with how you deliver. Proposals, one at a time. Each one is different for every client. Maybe you only respond to inbound and you have no outbound leads coming in. And at the end of the day, revenue is unpredictable. But if you have a proactive business, what does that mean? You have a pipeline. You know what's coming in. You have intent and you show up with intent. You're driving your own outreach and follow-up. You're automating key touch points. You're getting out of your own way. That's so important. You're getting out of your own way. And then what happens? Your revenue. It becomes consistent. This is where so many fractionals get stuck. They're amazing at delivering results, but they've built a business that only works when someone else starts the conversation. A real leader doesn't wait to be needed. A fractional will build demand. They guide the attention, they move first. And it is that shift from being reactive to proactive, that is the unlock. That's how you go from scattered activity to a controlled pipeline. It goes from fingers crossed to calls booked. So inside of Fractional OS, we call this your MVME. Your MVME, your minimum viable marketing engine. It is not about doing everything. It is about having the right things in place. Lead magnets to attract the right people, landing pages that convert, a nurture system that builds trust, and a clear call to action that drives those strategy calls. That's a proactive business. It doesn't chase clients. It creates clarity. It creates momentum and consistent opportunity. So the question is this: are you hoping that something comes in this week, or have you built a system that makes sure it does? Let me ask you the one question that separates professionals from powerhouses. Are you actually running your business like a business, or are you winging it with a resume and a Stripe account? Because here's what I see all too often. Smart, experienced fractional executives treat their businesses like a temporary project. No real structure, no metrics, no accountability, no plan. You wouldn't accept that from a client. So why are you accepting it from yourself? Running your business like a business means more than delivering good work. It means setting up the core functions that allow it to grow, operate, and evolve. So if we look at what is on the CEO dashboard, you need a clear offer. You need a system to attract clients. You need to be able to have a delivery framework that is repeatable. And you need your KPIs. You need metrics, you need forecasting. Ask yourself, do you have a productized offer that you can sell on repeat? Do you have a defined lead system, not just referrals? Do you have a delivery model that doesn't just depend on reinventing everything? Do you track your key metrics, book calls, close rates, monthly revenue, churn? Because what you don't measure, you can't fix. And what you don't structure, you can't scale. And honestly, this is the moment where so many fractionals plateau. They're good at the work. They even get decent traction, but they never step into that role of leader of their business. They get stuck in the cycle, doing the work, chasing the work, managing the chaos, and calling it fractional. You actually don't need more hustle. You need more structure. You need visibility. You need ownership. And that's what turns a capable executive into a real business leader. That's what turns inconsistency into momentum. And it's what separates those fractionals who just survive from the ones who scale. Run your fractional business like a business, or you'll always be chasing. So if you've made it this far, awesome. You already know this matters. And it's not just the client work, your work, the work of building a real business. One that reflects your experience, your standards, your vision. Because this isn't just about fixing your pipeline. It's about claiming your role as a leader, and not just inside your clients' organizations, but inside your own organization. And so we've covered a lot. Why mindset is the first scale constraint. Why your systems will be your exit ramp from burnout. Why leadership isn't about being helpful, it's about being in charge. Why reactivity kills growth, and why your business deserves the same level of intention you bring to everyone else's. This is your reminder that you didn't leave corporate to build a gig. You left corporate to build something that works, something that scales, something that lasts, and something that's yours. You're not a freelancer. You're not a fill-in. You're a fractional powerhouse. And the second you start showing up that way, everything will change. So if this hits home, hit the subscribe button, drop a comment, and let me know, what shift are you going to make this week to operate more like a CEO? Let's keep at it. We're just getting started.